only study of the XL pipeline ever paid for by somebody other than the pipeline company showed that building a pipeline from the tar sands of Canada to the refineries, including the Koch brothers refineries down in Texas, largely export refineries for export to South and Central America, would create 4,000 temporary construction jobs. It would raise gas prices in the Midwest by 20 to 30%. In fact, according to TransCanada's 2008 permit application, they said, this is the company that wants to build the pipeline. They said the XL pipeline is expected to strengthen Canadian crude oil pricing in the Midwest by removing this oversupply, an increase in annual revenue, which will produce an increase in annual revenue to the Canadian producing industry in 2003 of $2 to $3.9 billion. They suggest it will increase the price of gasoline in the Midwest, the American Midwest, by 20 cents a gallon, because there's an oversupply in the Midwest as a result of the nearby Canadian availability of this. I don't get it. Why would anybody defend this? Ronald Bailey is with us, a science correspondent for Reason Magazine, Reason.com. Ronald, I don't know if you wrote this piece. Don't be afraid of the Keystone XL pipeline. The Canadian pipeline won't mean the end of safe drinking water. Really?
That's what I wrote. I was looking not at the economic effects of the pipeline at all. I'm looking at the claims that it would cause tremendous environmental damage.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. The Keystone 1 pipeline, when it was built, now this was just all up in Canada, the Canadian government was promised that they would average one spill every 7 years. It has been in operation for 1 year, and it has had 12 spills. They've been ordered to dig up 10 different sections of the pipe. The steel was made in India, and the same Indian steel will be used to cross the American heartland, including the Missouri and Niobrara rivers and the Ogallala Aquifer. You think this represents no threat whatsoever to the United States?
No, I didn't say it didn't represent a threat. I don't think it represents the exaggerated threats that a lot of people are saying. Pipelines will spill. They will break. There's no question about that. The question is, the claims that have been made are things like that the Ogallala Aquifer would be polluted completely by this pipeline, or that there would be other tremendous concerns about pollution in rivers and so forth. And I think that they've been exaggerated. Again, I'm not saying that nothing will happen. That would be silly to say that. Things will happen. The question is the cost versus the benefits with regard to those kinds of activities.
Well, I understand the benefits to the Koch brothers. They're going to make a fortune on this stuff, refining it and exporting the gasoline to South America. I understand the benefits to all the other oil companies in North America. You're going to see the price of gasoline, particularly in the northern half of the United States, and heating oil go up by about 20 cents a gallon on average, because that oversupply that exists right now in the north is going to get exported out of the United States. I understand how, the oil industry makes a fortune on it. The Koch brothers make a fortune on it. We all take the risk. We've got a giant terrorist target running right across the middle of the United States. I don't understand why any American would give a damn about this unless they're paid to.
Well, I think that you're probably exaggerating the concerns about it. The fact is that oil prices are set internationally. I understand
not regional oil prices. Regional oil prices are largely actually a function of supply and demand. In Alaska, where you've got, or not just Alaska. I mean, there are large parts of the world where you've got. Well, right now, you know what the cost of gasoline is in Afghanistan? $1,000 a gallon. That's what the U.S. military is paying Halliburton for gasoline, $1,000 a gallon, because every gallon has to be brought in by helicopter. It's supply and demand in local areas. And the pipeline people themselves, in their application to the Canadian government, said that they expected that it would produce an extra $3.9 billion in revenue by raising the price of fuel 20 cents a gallon in the Midwest.
And what would it have for the overall gasoline price for the United States?
It would have no effect on it, because this is for export. This is why they're trying to take it to the Gulf of Mexico. It's for export. This is oil that we're going to be selling to Mexico and to South America.
Isn't that interesting? Because, after all, Mexico and South America sell less oil currently.
Up the West Coast, not down the East Coast.
I'm sorry?
Up the West Coast, not down the East Coast. Brazil, is importing oil right now. This is one of the fastest growing economy in the East.
The West Coast. Interesting. I wonder how that works. In any case, the main claim that I was particularly concerned about was if this pipeline were to burst. And you're right, by the way, the earlier pipeline they built has, in fact, had several spills since it's been operating, and those spills have been on the order of basically a gallon or two at a time, which you clean up with a mop bucket. There was one spill that was 21,000 gallons, and it occurred inside of a pumping station where it did not escape into the environment whatsoever. I'm not saying that those were good things, but again, tremendous damage did not occur because
But why would we want
spills.
this?
Basically, we want it because it does do a number of things. It does supply possibly other oil to the United States, depending upon how the future evolves with regard to oil supply from around
Why would
the world.
we want to be even increasing our dependence on oil? Why not take the money that would be spent on taking this, Canadian oil from Canadian corporations and handing it off to transnational corporations, refineries in Texas? Why not take that money and invest it through that same area? That corridor that it's going to go through is the center of wind power in the United States, according to T. Boone Pickens. Why not take that same money and build wind farms?
The cost of wind power, by the way, if you're going to start looking at those kinds of things, is basically 2 times more expensive than conventional electricity now. I also should point out that one of the other things that's going on with the Ogallala Aquifer is, as a matter of fact, we're producing a lot of ethanol from corn there, and by doing so are draining that aquifer to create subsidized ethanol, which is not very useful and not very environmentally friendly either.
I'm not a fan of subsidizing ethanol.
You're bringing up irrelevant, I think, things with regard to what is possibly happening with regard to this pipeline. I'm suggesting to you that by pointing to other things that you might do with that money, there are other outrages, if I might point them out, with regard to producing energy that also need to be addressed.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, our policy of subsidizing the production of corn for ethanol, or for that matter, corn to wipe out Mexican farmers, is absurd.
A huge percentage of Nebraska corn is being done.
That's got nothing to do with this. So we're sending $1 billion a day overseas to bring in sweet oil. This is the most. This stuff is far more corrosive than normal oil. This is tar sands oil. This is basically bituminous.
It's diluted down. It is not corrosive in the pipeline at all. That's a misnomer.
Okay. Well, then back to, again, quoting from TransCanada's 2008 permit application, quote, this is what they say. Existing markets for Canadian heavy crude, principally PADD 2, U.S. Midwest, are currently oversupplied, resulting in price discounting for Canadian heavy crude oil. According to the USGS, via the Keystone XL pipeline is expected to strengthen the Canadian crude oil pricing in the Midwest by removing this oversupply. This is expected to increase the price of heavy crude to the equivalent cost of imported crude. The resultant increase in the price of heavy crude is estimated to provide an increase in annual revenue to the Canadian producing industry by 2013 of U.S. $2 billion to U.S. $3.9 billion. Now, why, in the name of all that is sacred, would we give a rat's patootie about the Canadian oil-producing industry's profits?
I don't give a rat's patootie about anybody's producing profits. My question is it environmentally damaging? And that was the claim that's being made.
Well, burning oil is always environmentally damaging.
It's 350.org kind of organization. If you want to make other arguments, the economic arguments, please do that.
No, I'll go along with the, this is,
but the problem
you want to
is
release
that the
enormous
claims are
amounts
not
of carbon
being made
into the
in that
atmosphere,
regard.
too.
I'm sorry?
This would release enormous amounts of carbon into the atmosphere, too. Plus, it uses a mind-boggling amounts of water.
Well, with regard to the carbon dioxide emissions, it is obviously, I won't say obviously, but it will release more carbon to produce that particular type of oil. The question is, and you have to think about this, is this going to be the end of that oil? I think it'll be shipped to China instead, and will release even more carbon by being transported in that way.
Well, they're not. Nobody's talking about building a pipeline to the West Coast because the Canadians themselves won't allow it in Saskatchewan.
Yeah,
well,
that's not true.
Okay, well, we'll see how it plays out. Ronald Bailey, you can read all about it at Reason.com. Thank you, Ronald.
Thank you.